Hi, Era. My name is Ava, and I will be your interviewer for today's session. Thank you for your interest in this position. Let's get started with your introduction. Could you tell me more about yourself? Just a quick reminder, you can unmute by clicking the microphone button on your screen.
Hi Eva, my name is Era, and I have spent the last 10 years working at the intersection of communications and social impact. Most of my experience has been with purpose led organizations where I have led brand strategy, storytelling, media outreach, and digital campaigns that connect deeply with both community and corporate audiences. What drew me to this role is the organization's clear commitment to inclusion, courage, and purpose, not just as values, but as working principles. I am excited about the opportunity to bring my experience in building strong, mission aligned narratives to a team that's creating meaningful impact.
This interview consists of 3 questions designed to explore your ability to simplify complex data into compelling stories, handle public criticism sensitively, and build inclusive, scalable communication systems. When thinking out loud or working through your approach, you can mute your mic to avoid any accidental interruptions, then unmute when you're ready to share your answer. This helps keep our conversation clear and focused. Let me know if you're ready to start.
Yes, I am ready to begin.
Given the scenario, tell me how you'd turn dense program data into a story that's simple and powerful.
I would begin by identifying a real participant whose journey reflects the report's finding. I would look for someone whose experience reflects both the challenges faced by marginalized youth and the program's measurable impact. Ideally, their story would align with the overall data trends while offering a compelling narrative. um, I'd use their personal story as the emotional anchor, weaving in key data points to back it up. And to make the content engaging, I would create a short video featuring their story, layered with visuals of program activities and animated graphics to show the impact. This way, we humanize the statistics while subtly embedding the data that matters.
Okay, thanks for sharing your approach on turning dense program data into a simple story. Let's keep going. Can you tell me how you would handle it if there were multiple participant stories that all seemed important to include? How would you prioritize or combine them?
I would go through each of the stories, and I would start by identifying someone whose story has the emotional high points in moments of change, struggle, or breakthrough. And then I'll review the data to find numbers that directly correspond to those moments. For example, if a participant, someone talks about feeling more confident after, let's say, public speaking sessions, I would pair that stat showing a confidence increase across the cohort. So you see how it directly relates to our message, and the story relates to our message directly. So I would choose somebody whose story would have the most key points. And the goal would be to use just one or two key data points per section and ensure they enhance rather than distract from the emotional flow. So, a candidate whose story has an emotional flow and has the maximum number of points would be the most beneficial for us.
Okay, thanks for sharing your approach on handling multiple participant stories by focusing on emotional high points and pairing them with relevant data. Let's keep going. Can you tell me how you'd ensure the clarity and impact of the story when presenting both the narrative and the data together?
I would start by clarifying the goal of the story, whether it is to attract donors, influence policymakers, or engage with new partners. Then I would prioritize content that directly supports that goal. I would retain stats that show measurable change and remove repetitive and jargon heavy data. Anything that doesn't serve the core story or the emotional connection gets cut. Um, the key is to keep the narrative tight with just enough evidence to be credible and persuasive without overwhelming the viewer with a lot of numbers and something that doesn't go with the story. I would aim for a balance where the emotional stories draws people in and the numbers validate its credibility.
Okay, got it. Based on your approach, could you walk me through how you'd turn dense program data into a story that's simple and powerful?
As I said before, I would pinpoint a participant journey, uh, whose journey we can use for the story. And I would start by identifying the emotional high points in their journey, the breakthroughs and the moments of change. And then I would review the impact data to find numbers that directly correspond to those moments. For example, if the participant talks about feeling more confident after public speaking session, let's say, I would pair that with the stats showing a confidence increase across the cohort. I would prioritize data that's easy to visualize, avoiding overly technical indicators or complex metrics. And yeah, that's it.
That emphasis on pairing emotional moments with clear, accessible data stands out. How would you decide what to leave in or cut from the narrative?
Anything that does not go with the story and the emotional value of the participant's story, I would leave, and I would choose. If the data doesn't align perfectly with the story, I would definitely choose a different participant whose story matches better with the overall data, or I would pivot the emotional framing to highlight a part of their journey that is supported by the available stats. I would use uh, anything that I can display using clean infographics, animated charts, or simple overlays in videos to present numbers while the story is in the background and goes with the narrative. I would do that. Um, and I would leave in stuff which is not related and which is repeating, is jargon heavy, is very technical. I would leave that stuff out.
Okay. Thanks for sharing your approach to deciding what to include or cut from the narrative. Can you tell me more about how you balance the emotional storytelling with the accuracy or integrity of the data presented? What challenges might come up in that process?
Um, the emotional integrity and the uh, emotional storytelling and the integrity of the data presented to make sure that um, it is well balanced. I would make sure that every emotional element in the story is grounded in truth and backed by program data or direct quotes from our beneficiaries. While I might dramatize a structure or pacing for emotional impact, I would avoid exaggerating outcomes or cherry picking data. The goal is to honor both the lived experiences and the research. So I would cross check the narrative with program leads or M&E experts to ensure accuracy without losing heart.
Okay. Thanks for sharing your perspective on balancing emotional storytelling with data integrity. How would you decide what to leave in or cut from the narrative?
Mm, I will take a moment to answer this.
All right, take all the time you need.
I think I would start by defining the core message and the intended audience, as I said before, whether it's the donors, the partners, or the public. Once that is clear, I would filter the content to keep only what reinforces that message. I would prioritize personal anecdotes, key turning points, and one or two data points that highlight impact clearly. Anything too technical, repetitive, or disconnected from the story's emotional or strategic goals gets left out. If there's great data that doesn't fit the narrative flow, I would consider adding it as a supplementary content like an infographic or an appendix to ensure transparency without cluttering the main story and distracting from the main story.
That attention to tailoring content for different audiences stands out. How do you handle tension between emotional storytelling and factual accuracy?
Um, I would make sure that every emotional element in the story is grounded in truth and backed by program data or direct quotes from our beneficiaries. While I might dramatize structure or pacing for emotional impact, I would avoid exaggerating outcomes or cherry picking data. The goal would be to honor both the lived experiences and the research. So I would cross check the narratives with program leads or M&E experts to ensure accuracy without losing heart. For example, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that approach. Could you also describe a specific example or situation where you successfully balanced emotional storytelling with factual accuracy in your work?
Mm. In a previous campaign, we had a participant who said the program changed her life, but her employment status hadn't improved significantly. So we reframed her story to focus her increased confidence and aspirations, which was still true and aligned with the data.
Thanks for sharing that specific example. Could you tell me a bit more about how you ensured that the reframed story maintained both emotional impact and factual integrity? What steps did you take to strike that balance?
We made sure that we were not exaggerating what happened, and we also made sure that the facts aligned with the person completely. Uh, of course, we would not want to showcase a lie. So, the part which was not true for that particular candidate was left out while highlighting something that did bring a positive impact in her life. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks for explaining your approach. Could you tell me more about how you handle tension between emotional storytelling and factual accuracy?
I would collaborate closely with the monitoring and evaluation team since they have the most direct access to impact data and can validate whether the story aligns with the larger findings. And I would also consult with program leads or field staff who worked directly with the beneficiaries because they offer crucial context and can confirm the accuracy of qualitative details like personal milestones um, or the challenges faced. If possible, I loop in the participant themselves to verify quotes or anecdotes and ensure we're telling their story authentically. This multi layered review process helps maintain the emotional depth of the story without compromising on truth or trust.
How would you lead communications if the organization was criticized publicly for a sensitive issue on given scenario?
Mm, Okay, so in this situation, I would act quickly but deliberately. I would first acknowledge the criticism respectfully on public platforms without getting defensive. Probably something like we're listening and we're taking this seriously. Simultaneously, I'd convene a quick internal huddle with the program leads, PR agency, and the legal team to gather facts and understand the root of the concern. The aim would be to draft a holding statement within 2 to 3 hours, reinforcing the organization's values of inclusion and its intent to engage meaningfully with affected voices. I would also start mapping out key stakeholders, particularly the community leaders, and set up time for some direct outreach. The goal would be to demonstrate accountability and empathy before a detailed response is issued.
For sharing your approach in such a scenario. Can you tell me how you would handle potential misinformation spreading in social media during this time?
Mm, I would make sure that the message we are sending out has all the information. And for accounts or social media pages, anywhere where misinformation is spreading, I would make sure that that they are held accountable, and we do give an answer to whatever misinformation is being spread on other social media platforms. We I will make sure that we put out a statement which holds us accountable for what we have done, instead of statements that are escalating the situation without any basis. I would try to stop that, of course. Yeah.
Thanks for explaining your approach to handling misinformation on social media during sensitive communication crises. How would you ensure that your communication team coordinates internally to maintain consistent messaging across all platforms?
Mm. In situations like these, where people are high emotion and we have low clarity, I would prioritize a calm and structured internal communication, starting by acknowledging the situation is sensitive and that it is okay to have strong reactions. Then I would focus on aligning everyone around shared values like our commitment to inclusion and shared facts, and I would establish roles very clearly: who's leading the legal review, who's gathering feedback from community partners, who's preparing talking points. Most importantly, I'd keep communication frequent, short, and focused to avoid misinterpretation or panic.
Thanks for sharing your approach to internal communication during sensitive situations. How would you lead communications if the organization was criticized publicly for a sensitive issue? Could you walk me through your strategy for handling the external messaging and public response?
I'll take a moment to gather my thoughts for this question.
All right, take all the time you need.
Mm. So my first step would be acknowledging the criticism in a timely and empathetic manner, without getting defensive, and I would issue a brief holding statement. We've heard the concerns, and we are taking them seriously. While that's live, I would immediately bring together all our PR agency legal team to understand the facts and context and implications, and I then lead the drafting of a more detailed response. My priority would be to communicate with transparency and accountability while also reaching out directly to community representatives and acting swiftly but with substance, balancing reputational management with genuine responsibility.
Appreciating your emphasis on empathy and coordinated messaging in crisis situations. What principles would guide your public response in the first 24 hours?
Mm, I think empathy, transparency, and accountability will be three principles which would guide me in the first 24 hours. Empathy would ensure that we don't ignore or minimize concerns, especially from the marginalized voices. Transparency would mean that we acknowledge what happened and we're investigating it, even if we don't have all the answers yet. And accountability would mean that we're committing to correcting these missteps and publicly saying how we'll engage stakeholders moving forwards. So these principles would be embedded in all the communications, holding statements, internal emails, and whatever one-on-one outreach will take place.
Thanks for outlining those principles so clearly. Let's continue exploring. How would you handle any internal communication to ensure team alignment during this crisis? Could you elaborate on that?
Mm. For the internal communications, I would make sure that there is no panic or the situation does not escalate internally as well. Firstly, I would work closely with the legal team to ensure we acknowledge concerns without admitting fault prematurely, using language that's open but careful, like we're reviewing how this unfolds and uh, yeah.
Okay, let's dig deeper into your approach. What principles would guide your public response in the first 24 hours?
I think I've already answered this question before.
Okay, could you please clarify which part of your earlier answer you'd like to refer to? This will help me understand and continue from there appropriately.
Sure, just give me 1 second.
All right, take the time you need.
Yes, I have already answered this where I said empathy, transparency, and accountability will be the three principles which would guide me in the first 24 hours.